when you know you're pregnant, were you at all like nervous to tell like Julie and company that you were pregnant?
I was very nervous. I also felt very strongly for me personally that I just wanted to wait regardless. Like I did wait until I was, past my first trimester, which made me even more nervous because like that really goes into the timeline of right when we were starting to film. But yes, I was very nervous to make that call, being like the first female actress to be pregnant and needing to film an entire season of television and throw that kind of curveball at the writers. So, but it was met with support and excitement and also, oh my gosh, okay, what are we going to do? It's going to be great, but what are we going to do?
Because, I always love seeing if shows, you always have the option of the like, conveniently placed lamp or whatever, and then you don't write in the pregnancy. Obviously, you all went the other route. What kind of went into that decision for you all?
I'm curious to hear what you guys thought.
Yeah.
I remember it so vividly, but I totally want to hear what it was like for Neil and Melinda when I walked into the room.
I think I remember making the strong argument. I came around, but to me at the beginning, it was like, okay, like, I don't care about the logistics of shooting the pregnancy because I had never done that before. And everyone who had been doing this for longer was like, you don't want to try to not show something that has to be shown, in any master shot, in any coverage. Like there was a series of logistics that I think Julie came in with very concerned about that I had no idea about. But I was in the camp of like, well, our mythology does not support a vampire pregnancy. And we actually told a lot of story about how vampires can't get pregnant. Like that was kind of Elena's whole thing for a time. But our mythology, if you're binging the show, you see that our mythology expands and contracts to fit the needs of the season. And I actually think that we did have one avenue in mind, which was the loss of Joe and the Gemini coven. We had always sort of left that hanging on instinct. Is like, what was there some way that wasn't like this horrifying triple tragedy? It was just a single tragedy, like Vampire Diaries tends to do so often. So that was my entry point to it. And I don't remember a lot of the rest. I don't remember, what sold me on the storyline other than, I think, a passionate argument that it would make good, interesting story.
Yeah. I think that we were kind of like, how does Caroline feel about being, an unwilling participant at first in this pregnancy? Or just kind of like it happens to her. It's not something she had to say in. And we talked a lot about that and how important it was for us to feel as an audience and as a writer and as the cast, like we embrace this as a good thing. So a lot of the conversations were really about that. Like, how do you get your head and your heart around this? Like, this thing happened to my body, which now I'm going to be on board with because, I love these people around me and I'm all about keeping these kids alive. At the same time, it wasn't something I chose. It wasn't something I had in mind for myself. And, what does that do to kind of your psychology and your emotions of the moment?
Not possible.
What's not possible?
The babies, they're here.
Where? Floating in a raft in the Pacific Ocean somewhere? Look at the map. Your spell didn't work.
They're not on the map, Caroline. They're inside of you.
When I got the call, we were a couple weeks into story and it was Candice and Stefan, and leading lady, and it's time. It's going to be so hot and so sexy and naked. And she called and she's like, I have news. I'm pregnant. And I went, oh my God. Did I think you were with me? I think I might have thought you were pranking me. I'm not sure.
You said you had a dream. You said that you'd had a dream that like I was pregnant. And you were like, yeah, it was just a lot of like, like a lot of noises and just like, which now I understand like how much work had been done and how many episodes had been written, because I told you literally the week before Comic-Con, I think. I mean, it was right before we were going back to film is when it timed out that I was in a more comfortable place to share the news on a bigger scale. Melinda, to what you're talking about, like it's kind of happening to you. And, there was a lot that, where I just was trying to navigate being so excited to be at the job that I love, but now under this whole new pretense of like, well, now I can't really do stunts the way that I would normally do stunts, but I want to be a team player, and then my body's changing, and sometimes I looked very pregnant, and other times my belly would disappear and I'd be like supposed to be looking pregnant. It was just a very bizarre experience, to say the least.
I can't remember because of the tragedy of the twins and Joe dying and looking for a story for Alaric for this season, we had separately come up with the story of the woman who knocks on his door and is like, I think I'm pregnant with your babies. And him being like, I don't think so. She's like, no, actually, like your actual babies. And so we'd kind of cooked that story up as a, can we really go down that road? That's pretty crazy. Like womb transfer, magical uterine transfer, like we're already like, I don't know. And I can't remember if it was Dries or Brian or somebody. I wish I could decide to give the credit to, but somehow the idea came up that we take Caroline and put her in that storyline. And so I'd already called Peter Roth and Mark Pedowitz, the bosses, to tell him that Candice was pregnant. And I called him back and I said, so I'm about to pitch you the most bananas thing you will ever hear me pitch you. And I went into the whole pitch about the magical, embryonic transfer and the vampire who couldn't get pregnant, who's having babies. And I think it was Mark Pedowitz being like, Julie, believe it or not, that is not nearly the most bananas thing you've ever pitched me. And I was like, oh, good. Okay. Then we're fine. And then that shaped, I always laugh, and we've said this before, Sam, to you. It's like that decision to play into the pregnancy, to give birth to the Saltzman twins, to have Lizzie and Josie become part of the narrative while Hope was existing in the other narrative of the originals. That is why Legacies exists, 100%. So Candice's beautiful life miracle gave us a whole other show.